There was a moment here in Australia, when the wind seemed to whisper more than simply breeze. Not the wind through a town full of people going about their days. The wind through a town that is going about its days with fewer people than it had last year, and fewer than the year before that, and fewer than the year before that. The wind through a main street where every third shop has a for lease sign and the for lease sign has been there long enough to fade. Where the school has 16 students and the teacher knows all of them by name and their parents by first name and their grandparents by the stories they tell. Where the pub is still open but only on weekends now, and the person behind the bar is also the person who owns the building and the person who mows the oval and the person who sits on the council and the person who will turn the lights off when the last person leaves. There are towns in Australia that are dying because nobody moves there. Not ghost towns. Not abandoned places where the buildings stand empty and the silence has been total for decades. Towns that are still alive. Towns with people in them who wake up every morning and go to work and raise children and maintain the infrastructure of a community with the specific determination of people who have decided that this place is worth the effort of remaining. Towns that have a school and a pub and a general store and a council and a football club and a show society and a historical society and a CWA branch, all of it maintained by a diminishing number of people doing an expanding number of jobs, holding the shape of a community together with the kind of stubborn love that does not make the news because it is not dramatic enough and is not failing fast enough. We are counting down 12 stunning Australian towns that are dying because nobody moves there. Some have been losing population for 50 years. Some have lost it faster recently as the last of the older generation passes and the younger generation does not return. Some are so beautiful, so genuinely extraordinary in their landscape and their history and their specific quality of place, that the fact of their emptying feels like something is being lost that cannot be replaced once it is gone. One town has a main street that heritage architects travel from the city to photograph and a population that has halved in 20 years. Another has a community hall that was built by volunteers in 1923 and is still in use every week and will close when there are not enough people to justify keeping it open. And yes, one place has a landscape so extraordinary that the handful of people still there describe the experience of living in it as a privilege. And describe the emptying of it as a slow emergency that nobody in the city seems to have noticed. Think you know what is being lost in regional Australia? Let's find out if you are ready for towns where the cost of living is almost nothing, the landscape is extraordinary, and the most urgent question is not what it costs to be here but whether there will still be a here when you arrive. Like this video if you have ever felt that something important is disappearing from this country and nobody is paying enough attention. Subscribe because one day you will want to be part of something that needs you. And this channel is your guide to the places where that is not a metaphor but a genuine invitation. Let's break it down. Number 12. Quorn, South Australia. Quorn sits in the southern Flinders Ranges of South Australia, population around 900 people, and it is the kind of town that exists in a landscape so extraordinary that the question of why it is emptying feels like a question about the whole country rather than about one town. The Flinders Ranges begin their ascent behind the main street. The Peachy Ritchie Railway, a heritage steam train maintained entirely by volunteers, still runs through the ranges. The main street has stone buildings from the 1880s that are structurally sound and aesthetically extraordinary and largely empty. The population has dropped from over 2,000 in the mid-20th century to under 1,000 today. Median house prices in Quorn sit between $80,000 and $150,000. Rental accommodation runs between $130 and $190 per week. The cost of living is around 28% below the national average. Port Augusta, with a hospital and regional services, is 40 kilometers south. What Quorn offers beyond the price is the Flinders Ranges as a daily fact rather than a destination. We'll paint £1 an hour north. The light that Hans Hasen spent his life learning to paint. The specific quality of a landscape that is old in a way that affects people who spend time in it. A geological oldness that makes human timescales feel appropriately brief. One couple who moved from Adelaide wrote, "We paid $95,000 for a stone cottage built in 1887. The ranges are visible from every window. The town needs people, and we knew that when we came, and it is part of why we came. We are not saving corn. We are being part of it for whatever time it has. The trade-off is a town genuinely diminishing. Services contract as population contracts, and the question of what corn looks like in 20 years is genuinely open. Committing to a place that is uncertain requires a kind of faith that not everyone can sustain. Picture this. It is a morning in the Flinders Ranges. The light is doing what the light here does, which is make everything look like a painting that a very good painter spent a long time on. Your stone cottage cost $95,000. The ranges are in front of you. Something important is here, and it needs people to stay important. Number 11. Minyip, Victoria. Minyip sits in the Wimmera region of Victoria, population around 350 people, and it has the distinction of being used as the location for the television series A Country Practice. The fictional Wandin Valley was filmed here in the 1980s, and the town has been carrying this association ever since, which is either charming or slightly melancholy depending on your relationship with the idea of a town whose most significant cultural moment was 40 years ago. The Wimmera is wheat country, flat, golden in summer, enormous skied, and producing food for the country without acknowledgement or ceremony. The main street has a pub, a general store, a heritage-listed post office, and the specific quietness of a place where commercial activity has contracted to match the population. Median house prices in Minyip sit between $60,000 and $110,000, some of the lowest in Victoria. Rental accommodation is limited and runs between $110 and $160 per week. Horsham, with a hospital and regional services, is 40 kilometers away. The community in Minyip has the specific intensity of small communities: the football club, the show, the CWA, the historical society, all maintained by a small number of people who do multiple jobs because there is nobody else. The town knows it is losing people and is not passive about it. One person who moved from Melbourne wrote, "I paid $68,000 for a house in Minyip. I came because the price made the calculation obvious, and I stayed because the community made the decision feel right." The town needs people. That turns out to be a reason to stay rather than a warning to leave. The trade-off is genuine smallness, limited services, the flat Wimmera landscape, and the specific uncertainty of a community fighting a demographic current that has been running against it for decades. Picture this. It is a summer evening in Minyip. The wheat is golden and the sky above the Wimmera is enormous. The pub is open. Your house cost $68,000. The town is 350 people, and it needs more, and it knows it, and it is still here. Number 10. Braidwood, New South Wales. Braidwood sits on the southern tablelands of New South Wales between Canberra and the coast, population around 1,400 people. The most culturally complete town on this list, with a heritage-listed main street, an independent bookshop, a functioning arts community, and a specific quality of life that people who move there describe with the reverence of people who found something they did not expect to find affordable. The town has been attracting people from Canberra and Sydney for years, drawn by the heritage streetscape, the four seasons, the proximity to the coast and the capital. But for every person who moves in, others leave, and the balance has not yet tipped decisively toward growth. Median house prices sit between $350,000 and $450,000, higher than most entries on this list but dramatically below Canberra and Sydney for a town with this quality of place. Rental accommodation runs between $210 and $290 per week. Canberra is an hour away. The bookshop is the detail that matters most. A town with a functioning independent bookshop has made a decision about who it is. The community's ability to keep it open depends on the community continuing to exist at a scale that makes it viable. One writer who moved from Sydney wrote, "I came because Braidwood was affordable and interesting and an hour from Canberra. I stayed because the town is the kind of place that gets better the longer you are in it." The bookshop is open. The pub has been a pub for 150 years. The community needs people who mean to stay. The trade-off is cold winters, the higher price point relative to other entries on this list, and the specific challenge of a town that is partially discovered but not yet secure. Picture this. It is a winter morning in Braidwood. The frost is on everything. The main street is heritage listed and catching the morning light. The bookshop opens at 10. Your house cost $380,000. The town needs people who intend to be here. You intend to be here. Number 9. Peterborough, South Australia. Peterborough sits in the mid-north of South Australia, population around 1,500 people, and it was once one of the most significant railway junctions in Australia. The place where three different gauges met, which made it essential to the movement of goods and people across the continent and gave it, at its peak, a population of over 5,000 people. The gauges were standardized. The junction became less critical. The population declined. What remains is a town with infrastructure built for 5,000 people and occupied by 1,500. Wide streets, substantial public buildings, a heritage streetscape that is the physical record of a significance that has not entirely departed but has substantially diminished. Median house prices sit between $65,000 and $120,000. Rental accommodation runs between $110 and $170 per week. Port Pirie, with a hospital and regional services, is 100 kilometers south. The Steamtown Heritage Rail Centre maintains a significant collection of historic locomotives staffed almost entirely by aging volunteers. The collection is significant. The volunteers are aging. The question of who maintains it in the next generation is the question the town asks about itself in multiple forms. One retiree wrote, "I paid $72,000 for a house in Peterborough. The streets are wide enough for the horse-drawn vehicles they were designed for. I am one of 1,500 people living in infrastructure built for more. There is something both melancholy and magnificent about that. The trade-off is the distance from services, the specific sadness of a town built for more than it now contains, and the genuine uncertainty of a community that has been declining long enough that reversing the trend requires more than individual decisions." Picture this. It is an afternoon in Peterborough. The wide streets are quiet. The substantial buildings stand the way buildings stand when built for more people than currently need them. Your house cost $72,000. The steam engines are in the shed. The volunteers are working on them. Something important is being maintained here by people who have decided it is worth maintaining. Number 8. Dunolly, Victoria. Dunolly sits in the Victorian goldfields, population around 800 people, with the goldfields quality that the best surviving goldfields towns carry, a main street built for more ambition than the gold ultimately justified, a landscape scarred by the diggings and now absorbed back into the bush, and a community that has outlasted the gold by 150 years and is not done yet. The welcome stranger nugget. The largest alluvial gold nugget ever found, weighing over 71 kilograms, was found near Dunolly in 1869. The town contracted to the size proportional to the agricultural economy that replaced the gold rush. What remains is a town with genuine history, affordable housing, and a community actively seeking new residents. Median house prices sit between $100,000 and $180,000. Rental accommodation runs between $140 and $200 per week. Maryborough, with a hospital and services, is 25 kilometers away. The goldfields landscape around Dunolly, the diggings, the bush grown back through them, is the landscape of a place that was once intensely disrupted and has been slowly returning to itself for 150 years. Walking through it is walking through visible history. One family who moved from Ballarat wrote, "We came to Dunolly because the price was right and stayed because the community was real. The town has 800 people and they show up for each other in ways that 800,000 people in a city do not. The gold is gone but the town it built is still here. The trade-off is small size, limited local services, and the specific challenge of a goldfields town losing population so slowly and so steadily that the trend feels like gravity." Picture this. It is a morning in the goldfields. The bush grew back through the diggings, the specific regrowth of a landscape turned over and left and slowly reclaimed. Your house cost $130,000. The welcome stranger was found not far from here. The town it built is still standing. It needs people. You are here. Number 7. Adaminaby, New South Wales. Adaminaby sits in the Snowy Mountains region, population around 300 people, and it is technically a new town. The original was flooded by Lake Yucumbene when the Snowy Mountains scheme dammed the Yucumbene River in the 1950s. The residents moved, taking their community with them, which says something about the specific stubbornness of the people who chose to stay. Old Adaminaby is still visible. In drought years, when the lake level drops, the foundations and chimneys of the original town emerge from the water. A ghost town appearing and disappearing with the seasons in a way that is genuinely haunting and genuinely beautiful. Median house prices sit between $150,000 and $220,000. Rental accommodation runs between $170 and $230 per week. Kuma is 60 kilometers away. The Snowy Mountains ski fields are within reach as a regular excursion. One person who relocated from Canberra wrote, "I paid $180,000 for a house in a town that moved itself 50 years ago to survive a flood. That stubbornness is in the community still. The drowned town appears in the lake in dry years. The new town is still here. I find that more inspiring than I expected to. The trade-off is genuine remoteness from major services, cold winters at high altitude, and a very small population at the lower edge of what constitutes a functioning community. Picture this. It is a drought year. The chimneys of old Adaminaby are visible above the waterline, the ghost town surfacing from the reservoir that replaced it. The new town is behind you. The mountains are in every direction. Your house cost $180,000. The town moved itself once to survive. It is still moving in the only direction that matters, which is forward. Number 6. Oruro, South Australia. Oruro sits in the southern Flinders Ranges, population around 500 people, at the intersection of the ranges and the plains, at the edge of the agricultural south giving way to the more arid country of the north. The town has a heritage-listed main street, a pub operating since the 1880s, a community-maintained swimming pool, and the energy of a place that has decided to remain. Median house prices sit between $60,000 and $100,000. Rental accommodation runs between $90 and $150 per week, among the lowest on this list. Port Pirie, with a hospital, is 100 kilometers south. The ranges begin immediately north of town, and the walking, the scenery, and the specific quality of being at the edge of the Flinders system are available as daily facts rather than special excursions. The swimming pool, maintained by volunteers, is the community gathering point in summer and exists only because people decide each year that it is worth maintaining. One remote worker wrote, "I pay $95 a week for a house in Oruro. The ranges are 10 minutes north." The pub has been open since 1884. The swimming pool is open in summer because the community decides every year that it will be. That decision, that annual decision to maintain something together, is the reason I am here. The trade-off is very small size, limited services, distance from the city, and a community genuinely at risk of dropping below the threshold where it is self-sustaining. Picture this. It is a summer afternoon. The swimming pool is open. The community that decided to keep it open is in it. The ranges are north. The pub has been here since 1884 and intends to remain. Your rent is $95 a week. The town needs people. You are in the pool. This is enough. This is more than enough. Number 5. Tenterfield, New South Wales. Tenterfield sits on the New England tablelands, population around 3,500 people, carrying the distinction of being the town where Henry Parkes gave the speech that began the conversation about Australian Federation, the birthplace, in a real sense, of the idea that these colonies could be a single country. The main street, lined with deciduous trees that turn in autumn to the color that makes people drive from Brisbane to photograph them, is heritage listed and genuinely beautiful. The granite country around the town, enormous rounded boulders rising from grassland, is the landscape that has been here since before the idea of Australia existed. Median house prices sit between $230,000 and $300,000. Rental accommodation runs between $190 and $260 per week. The cost of living is around 22% below the national average. The town has been losing population slowly for 2 decades, the specific spiral where services contract as population contracts and the contraction accelerates departure, which is the regional trap that is very difficult to escape without deliberate intervention. One person who moved from Brisbane wrote, "I came to Tenterfield because of the autumn colors and the Federation history and the price. I stayed because the town gets better the longer you are in it. It needs people who mean to stay. That is either a burden or a reason. I have decided it is a reason. The trade-off is genuine distance from major cities, cold winters at 800 meters, and a demographic decline requiring active reversal rather than passive residence. Picture this. It is an autumn morning. The deciduous trees on the main street are turning the specific color of New England autumn. The granite boulders are in every direction. Your house cost $250,000. Henry Parks gave the speech that made this country here. The country is still here. The town needs people to keep it that way. Number 4. Kimba, South Australia. Kimba sits on the Eyre Peninsula, population around 600 people, calling itself the halfway point across Australia. The sign on the main street marks the precise midpoint between the coasts, which is either a piece of information or a philosophy depending on what you are looking for. The council has run active programs to attract new residents, and the community has the energy of a place that understands its situation and responds to it deliberately. Median house prices sit between $70,000 and $140,000. Rental accommodation runs between $130 and $190 per week. Port Augusta is 170 kilometers away. The Eyre Peninsula produces some of the best seafood in Australia, and the coastal towns within reach of Kimba have fishing cultures that are old and genuine: tuna, prawns, oysters produced in the cold waters of the Spencer Gulf, accessible to residents as a fact of regional geography rather than a special occasion. One retired couple wrote, "We paid $82,000 for a house in Kimba. We drive to the coast on weekends and buy fish from boats that caught them this morning. We are part of a community that is trying to survive, and we find that more meaningful than we expected. The trade-off is genuine remoteness, limited local services, and the particular weight of living in a town explicitly trying to attract people because it needs them." Picture this. It is a Saturday. You drive to the coast from Kimba. The Spencer Gulf is cold and producing extraordinary things. You buy fish from a boat. The sign on the main street marks the halfway point across the continent. Your house cost $82,000. The ocean is closer than it looks on the map. Number 3. Cloncurry, Queensland. Cloncurry sits in the Gulf country of northwest Queensland, population around 3,000 people, and it is the town where John Flynn established the first base of the Royal Flying Doctor Service in 1928, the place where the idea that distance from medical care should not be a death sentence was first made practical. The town has the particular energy of outback Queensland. Direct, unsentimental, built around cattle and mining, possessed of a relationship with the land that is practical rather than romantic and more honest for it. Median house prices sit between $150,000 and $240,000. Mount Isa, with a full hospital, is 120 kilometers west. The outback landscape around Cloncurry, the red earth, the Mitchell grass plains, is the landscape most Australians know from photographs and have never stood inside. The scale of it, the quality of the light, the silence that has genuine depth, these are available to residents as daily facts of geography. One teacher wrote, "I came to Cloncurry because the Flying Doctor history was interesting and the price was right. I stayed because the community is real in a way that communities in the city are not always real. People need each other here in practical ways. That need creates a texture of relationship I had not found before. The trade-off is extreme heat, genuine remoteness from major cities and specialist services, and the specific challenges of a remote outback community requiring both physical and psychological adjustment. Picture this. It is an evening in Cloncurry. The red earth is cooling from the day. The Mitchell grass plains stretch in every direction. The Flying Doctor base is still operating. Still doing what John Flynn decided in 1928 that it should do. Your house cost $170,000. The sky above the outback at night is the sky that makes everything else seem like a smaller version of something. Number 2. Ravensthorpe, Western Australia. Ravensthorpe sits on the south coast of Western Australia between Esperance and Albany, population around 1,500 people, existing in a botanical landscape so extraordinary that scientists come from overseas to study it and most Australians have never heard of it. The Fitzgerald River National Park begins at the edge of town and extends east along the coast. The park is a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve containing more plant species per hectare than almost anywhere on Earth. Banksia, Hakea, Grevillea, hundreds of endemic species that grow here and nowhere else. The wildflower season from August to October transforms the surrounding country into something that people who have seen it find difficult to adequately describe. Median house prices sit between $120,000 and $180,000. Rental accommodation runs between $150 and $220 per week. Esperance, with a hospital, is 190 kilometers west. One botanist who moved to be near the Fitzgerald River wrote, "I came for the plants and the park. I stayed because the town is genuine and the park is extraordinary, and the combination, botanical wilderness beginning at the edge of a small town, is something I have not found anywhere else. The wildflowers in September are not something I will ever stop being grateful to see." The trade-off is the instability created by the nearby nickel mine, genuine remoteness from major services, and a population that fluctuates with industrial cycles. Picture this. It is September. The heathlands around Ravensthorpe are flowering. The Fitzgerald River National Park contains more plant species per hectare than almost anywhere on Earth, and it begins at the edge of your town. Your house cost $140,000. The botanists are in the park. The wildflowers are doing what they do every year. You live here. Number 1. Borowa, New South Wales. Borowa takes the top spot as the most stunning Australian town, dying because nobody moves there, because Borowa is genuinely beautiful, genuinely affordable, genuinely community-minded, and genuinely in need of the kind of people who watch this video and wonder if there is a different way to live. Borowa sits in the tablelands of southern New South Wales between Young and Canberra, population around 1,600 people, and it has the specific quality of a town that has not yet been discovered by the people who are looking for exactly what it offers. The rolling tablelands landscape, the hills, the Borowa River, the canola fields yellow in spring, the deciduous trees turning in autumn, is the landscape of a place that does not need anything added to it. The town has a bakery, a pub that has been here since the 1860s, a community hall, a CWA branch operating for nearly 100 years, a heritage streetscape, and a community with the energy of a place that knows its situation and is choosing to respond to it actively. The Irish Wolfest brings people from around the region every year and is the kind of event that a community of 1,600 people should not be able to organize, and does anyway. Median house prices sit between $200,000 and $280,000. Rental accommodation runs between $180 and $240 per week. Young, with a hospital and services, is 35 kilometers away. Canberra is 130 kilometers south. One family who moved from Canberra wrote, "We paid $210,000 for a house in Borowa. Our children go to the local school where the teachers know them. Our neighbors bring us vegetables from their garden. The CWA still meets every month. The pub has been here since 1862. We moved from Canberra where we were paying more per week in rent than we now pay per month in mortgage. The town needs people. We needed a town. That turned out to be the same thing. The trade-off is cold winters, the drive to Canberra for specialist services and major shopping, and the specific challenge of a community fighting a demographic current that will not turn without deliberate intervention from people who choose to be here on purpose. Picture this. It is a spring morning in Burrawa. The canola fields are yellow in every direction. The Burrawa River is running clear. The bakery is open. The pub has been here since 1862. Your house cost $210,000. The CWA is meeting this week. The Wolfest is in the calendar. The town is here. It needs people who mean to stay. You mean to stay. That is the whole thing. That is everything. And in that quiet hush, beneath the whispering gums, in the emptying main streets and the volunteer-maintained swimming pools and the pubs that have been open since before Federation and the communities holding themselves together with the specific love of people who have decided that this place is worth the effort of remaining. I realized not all shadows hide. Some simply invite us to see. We just counted down 12 stunning Australian towns that are dying because nobody moves there. Some have been emptying for 50 years. Some are fighting back harder than you would expect. And all of them have something the cities traded away, a scale of community where people know each other, where infrastructure is maintained by the people who use it, and where your decision to be there is not incidental but consequential. The prices are real. The beauty is real. The need is real. But so is the possibility that somewhere on the New England tablelands, in the Victorian goldfields, on the Eyre Peninsula, in the Flinders Ranges, there is a town that needs exactly what you have to offer, waiting with the patient stubbornness of places that have been waiting for a long time for someone to arrive and mean it. If this video showed you something worth seeing, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a different kind of map. We will see you in the next one. This video expresses poetic and reflective storytelling. Population figures and property prices are based on publicly available information and may vary. It does not offer financial, legal, or real estate advice.